This year, the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, or NSFAS, has approved over 300,000 applications for funding. Now, despite this, many students took to social media claiming that their applications were rejected without any reason. Others claim that they have not received any funding from NSFAS for this year. Now, we were scheduled to be joined by Dr. Randall Carolison. He's the administrator of NSFAS. However, he cancelled on us last night. So that unfortunately is, it's sad for this interview because we were hoping to get a lot more answers to the questions that are lingering. But we have got with us still Thabo Shingange. He's the national spokesperson for the South African Union of Students. So let's welcome him. He is in our Pretoria studios. Thabo, thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Obviously, it would have been great if we could have had Randall with us, because that was the, that's a key to the answers as to what's going on. And I mean, let's get your reaction and your view on more than the 65,000 applications that have been rejected. What's the reason being given?
Thank you. For instance, as a union, we excuse me. As a union, we don't take lightly to 65,000 applications being rejected, but of course, it does call us to look deeper into the matter in terms of understanding what are the basis of these rejections. We have been receiving complaints from students saying that part of them have been rejected on the basis that their family household income is more than 122,000, which turns out to be false. And so in that process, we're reviewing some of those rejections and receiving positive feedback from NSFAS itself. So of course, the number itself seems to be too large, and we are saying as a union of students that no eligible student should be left behind in the process, including being rejected by arbitrary means.
Yeah. What is the usual percentage? I mean, is this number a lot more than what we usually see?
Sorry, can you just repeat the question again?
Just in terms of the percentage and the number that's being quoted, 65,000 applications being rejected, what is the normal figure or the normal percentage of rejections?
I mean, for us, the issue is not really a matter that can be quantified per se, but it's rather to say that if there is free education, therefore there should not be a student that is rejected on the basis of some arbitrary matter on their financial standing. So, for instance, if a student is coming from a family household income that is below 122, meets the NSFAS criteria, is a SASA recipient, or whatever the case might be, they should be eligible for funding without any hindrance. No student, not even one student, should be left behind who is eligible for funding. And so, for us, I mean, I haven't seen the data that can compare the previous years, but even if it was 10 students, if they were eligible for NSFAS, as a union, we are saying that they should not be left behind, and that's what we were championing to achieve.
Yeah. You had a meeting with NSFAS administration last week to talk about free education. What were some of the outcomes? How did that meeting go?
Yes, we met last week with the administrator, Dr. Randall Carolison, in Cape Town, and part of that meeting was first to get an understanding as to what is NSFAS doing since our last engagement, because we had a previous engagement with SRCs and NSFAS, where he outlined his POA for the registration period and some of the technicalities, because we had walk-in applications and NSFAS application was closed. And so in that meeting, we're able to develop strategies to say that if for instance, there are walk-in applications at universities, how then do we enable the funding for them to take place? Also to deal with some of the outstanding challenges, particularly, I think most of the issues dealt around the issue of rejections, because many students were rejected, even if they applied on time, on the basis that their household income was above a certain average, which was not correct. But also we met to deal with the issue of the historical debt, and I think as a union we can't stress this enough. We cannot speak of free education while students have historic debt. And so we're speaking to NSFAS and also to the Minister of Higher Education, Naledi Pandor, to clear off that historic debt, particularly for the years 2016-2017, because when they put the moratorium on the free education crisis, they did not speak about the historical debt that would have accumulated. And so it's compromising the higher education project, which is why students are saying there is no free education, because you cannot speak of free education while you're speaking of this historic debt in the process. Yeah. And so that has been submitted to Dr. Carolison and his team to look into the matter in terms of how do we alleviate the pressure for students while enabling a smooth entry into the second phase of the free education project.
Yeah, I mean, do you believe it's possible? Do you think free education is something that can be accomplished?
Sorry, can you just repeat the last part again?
Free education, do you believe it's possible? Can it be accomplished?
As a union, I mean, the data is out there. We've studied the data. We've done our research. Free education is possible. It just needs the commitment from those entrusted with the free education project, of which to fine-tune it and to channel it in. And I think, for instance, the first rollout, which was last year, we've seen some of the positive outcomes of it and some of the negative outcomes of it. And we're hoping the second year we're able to rectify, and by the time the free education rollout plan has been, by the time rather free education has been rolled out, we should be able to see a fully functioning free education system.
Yeah.
But insofar as students will receive rejection letters for that particular free education system, it will remain an ideal for them, or something that is not attainable, up until we fix all the glitches that are in the system in terms of ensuring that everyone has access to free higher education and the quality that it deserves.
How is your relationship as a union with NSFAS? Are you working together with them?
Our relationship with NSFAS is always informed by a CC approach, which is contradictory and complementary. Where there are aspects and elements that as a union we feel we can complement, we will work hand in hand in terms of ensuring what is in the best interest of South African students. But without fear or favor, we as a union hold firm the belief that we'll contradict NSFAS at any point in time when we feel like the free education project is being compromised, or we feel like South African students are being compromised in the process. So it's really a CC approach where we feel that there's a need to work hand in hand, we'll work hand in hand, but without fear or favor, we will contradict where necessary.
So NSFAS, according to them, they're saying that they had 417,000 applications and over 300,000 of those were approved. Were you hoping that all of them were approved? I mean, let's sort of understand that. I mean, are you happy with the number of approvals? Is it just that you're unhappy with the fact that there could have been more, or is this a satisfactory number?
Again, we don't want to quantify the issue per se. I think as a union we hold the belief that every single South African student who qualifies for free higher education must be able to receive the necessary funding to that effect. Up until then, we cannot rest, or we cannot be happy with any figure for that matter, because our view as a union is that no student should be left behind. So whether it is one student who has an issue or 10 students who have an issue, we can never be happy up until every single deserving and eligible South African student receives the necessary funding that they deserve, and that they fought very hard for, and which as a union it is our responsibility to defend the free education project.
I know that NSFAS have basically said that, you know, due to certain scams that are doing the rounds, everything must be online now, and they will communicate with students via their online self-service, and you can also go and appeal on their online service. Is it good enough? I mean, do you think that this is going to help students? Because some of the reactions I've been reading is that it is impossible to get hold of NSFAS, get through to them, and actually get anywhere with the process.
I think the two issues we would like to problematize as a union. I think the online, everything being done online is, you know, we're living in a technologically advanced era, but we cannot negate the fact that a lot of students do not have access to resources that will enable them to perform all of these functions online. And so when that becomes an issue, you have the toll-free number, but students are saying, and we've called in ourselves at times where the number is just very busy, given that the high intake of calls that inquiries are going to NSFAS. But insofar as the process is involved of whether it is appealing or whether it is submitting outstanding documents or whether it is querying on your application status, I think for the most part the online system has been effective. But where there seems to be an issue, we advise and we encourage students to approach their various SRCs on their campuses, to approach the union itself via our social media platforms, or to get in touch with student activists to raise these issues. Because as a union, we have a direct line with Dr. Carolison and the NSFAS team, and we are able to fast-track the process. Just for instance, last week when we were in Cape Town, we had made up a social media call out to say students who have issues must just send through, whether it was a private message, whether it was a WhatsApp text, whether it was on a tweet, and we were able to send through those issues to NSFAS and receive immediate responses to them while we're still there. So we are taking full opportunity of our proximity to NSFAS in order to assist those students who are not able to receive responses on time or effectively, or who do not get any response at all. We encourage them to write to us, so that we can speak and act on their behalf.
Yeah, which is good, because it's important to have that intermediary. Now, people that want to appeal, that appeal process is still open. Those that have been rejected for whatever reason it may be, because there's a list of reasons I'm having a look at why they could be rejected. But the biggest one, of course, is possibly the income in the family. But it's still very difficult to afford tertiary education. I mean, what is that minimum? Is it 122,000 per household? Anyone below that could qualify.
You see, there's two. We're talking about two groups here. There's the 122. We're talking about students who are in their third year of studies and above. And remember, the free education project is currently being rolled out for first years and second years in the process. And so we're talking about two different figures: the 300,000 figure and the 122 figure. So we mustn't confuse the two. But for the most part, those who have been rejected. Before that, even the registration period, if you look at the registration period, mostly have been focusing on first year entrance. So these are students who would most likely not owe the university anything because they come straight out of matric, whatever the case might be. But now we're entering the second phase of the registration period, and we're dealing with senior students who, for the most part, have historic debt and who are using a household income different to that of the first year and second year intake. And so the rejection of 122,000 for the senior students is a cause for concern in terms of how do we enable funding and completion, because they started the program already and now they're on their way out. How do we ensure that they receive the necessary support, the necessary funding from NSFAS itself? We do not anticipate much issues regarding first year entrance unless the issue was in terms of their rejection based on the household income being more than 300,000. But even then, with the appeal process in place, if, for instance, students received rejection letters on the basis that the household income is more than that which they had stated and is not true, we encourage those students to appeal. And if they do not get a response in that effect, to write to us and we'll appeal on their behalf. And more often than not, the students that have come to us have received positive outcome within the first 2 days of our inquiry. And so the appeal process is still online. The application form is online. NSFAS says that they have a 7-day response time to the queries. We encourage students to appeal online, to submit their documents, to wait for the feedback from NSFAS. And if there's no feedback from NSFAS, do write to us, do engage with your SRCs. And we cannot stress the important role of the governance structures on campuses, the SRCs in particular, the study finance portfolios or whoever is designated in the SRC to deal with these particular queries. Because once the issue goes through them, we are able as a union to engage with the SRCs and get the database from the SRCs and be able to send it through to NSFAS. It becomes very tricky when the students do not approach the SRCs or the various political or student organizations that might be trying to assist them in the process and just leave it in wonder. We are not able to get a sense of how big is the issue or how big is the matter up until students approach their various representatives, and so we can be able to fine-tune the process to NSFAS.
Yeah.
And so that is our biggest challenge at the moment, and not necessarily the appeal process itself.
Okay. Well, I imagine another challenge, and just to wrap up the conversation, is the backlog in dispersing financial aid. We saw that happening last year and 2017. What struggles did you as a union actually find in this?
That's in terms of which backlog?
Distributing the backlog of funds, payments to the students.
Oh, payments to the students. I mean, for instance, NSFAS has made promises that for the 2019 academic year, students will receive, a first amount. I think it's 5,225, if I'm not mistaken, just after they've registered. So this month of February, and that money is supposed to cover their study material and the 225 or 75, if I'm not mistaken, as their personal allowance. And so we are hoping that we'll be monitoring this particular process, and once it shows a smooth entry, then it will give us confidence into the rest of the year in terms of how the funds will be dispersed. But another thing we'd like to also stress is that the funds will be going directly into the students' bank accounts for the first time. And so that is something we're also monitoring in terms of its effectiveness and its long-term implications, and how that can perhaps ease off some of the backlogs that have been in the system, because much more often than not, the backlogs have been caused by either corruption that has been in the system or embedded in the system, or institutions not perhaps communicating or liaising with NSFAS and the student directly, because once you made it a student-centered model, you remove and the NSFAS offices are based in Cape Town, you had removed some of the human interaction in terms of dealing with the queries, and so that created a huge backlog. But we are happy now that NSFAS has dispersed regional offices or regional NSFAS officials to be able to liaise with the regional SRCs, so your local SRCs around here, to be able to speed up some of the queries that might be directed towards NSFAS and get some real-time responses. So maybe that will ease off the backlog in terms of the previous years and the current year currently.
All right, Thabo, let's leave it there for this morning. Thanks so much for talking to us. Thabo Shingange is the national spokesperson of the South African Union of Students, for chatting to us this morning. As we mentioned, we had expected Dr. Randall Carolison as well, the administrator of NSFAS, but unfortunately he cancelled on us last night. Right, we take a break. We'll have the news at 8 o'clock after this. Stay tuned.